Hello and welcome to Don't Bury the Lead. My name is John Zindel. This is Dom Scarcella. We watch WWE Smackdown every Friday night and recap the show live. Dom, go ahead and tell the people about yourself.
Hello, everyone. It's another Friday night of watching SmackDown and getting back into wrestling and turning on the analyst brain as well as the fan brain. So, hey, without further ado, John, we get right to the point here. Don't bury the lead. What's our top story coming out of this episode of SmackDown?
Thanks, Dom. Top story here. The Bloodline is back, and so is Jey Uso, returning with Jimmy Uso tonight to defend the titles against Braun Strowman and Ricochet. And that is the big story because he's back, but there's a lot to it. We got a lot going on. Dom, what's your thoughts on Jey Uso's return and the different vignettes and angle they're kind of portraying tonight?
They go off the air tonight, almost kind of breaking the fourth wall. It's Paul Heyman and Jimmy Uso closing the show, and Paul saying that next week they don't have to be there; they can stay home and watch it on television, because sometimes you see things on television that you don't see live. And this is something that, in pro wrestling, when there are cameras backstage, do the wrestlers know the cameras are backstage, or do they not know the cameras are backstage? Because a lot of times they act as if they don't know the cameras are backstage. But
Yes.
apparently they know the cameras are backstage. But then they act in the ring as if they don't know the cameras are backstage, because they don't know things that people who are watching TV know. So now I'm kind of confused. Do the wrestlers know that the cameras are there, or are the cameras supposed to be kind of spying on the wrestlers? Or are the wrestlers supposed to know the cameras are there? Because the way they act, it should be influenced by whether or not they know cameras are there. And they're trying to show that there's something not all there in the bloodline. Like the bloodline is not back together, at least not from what we see on TV. Jay showed up to be there for his brother Jimmy. There's no indication that he's there to support anybody else in the bloodline.
Yeah.
Solo's not there tonight. Roman's not there tonight. Heyman goes out to the ring by himself at the beginning of the show. This is like older school Paul Heyman. Back when he was like, when they had very limited dates for Brock Lesnar to appear on TV. And so they would use Paul Heyman as a way to make Brock Lesnar appear on TV without actually wasting one of his appearance dates.
Right.
So Paul would go out there and talk, and you knew he was representing Brock Lesnar.
Mm-hmm.
So Paul he's going older school tonight. Paul Heyman's out there to open the show, and he's talking, and it's like on behalf of Roman Reigns. And it's weird because for months we've been seeing the bloodline together and how they're all together. And now, since Royal Rumble and the end of that Royal Rumble pay-per-view, bloodline, we don't know. So this is clearly some shifting and pivoting in the main storyline of SmackDown.
Yeah. I agree with you where the end was confusing, where they were saying, like you said, the fourth wall was being broke down. Yeah. And he's like, sometimes the cameras catch some things. And I just was like, they have to move the stories along somehow. So they do stuff in the backstage. But when they had those little vignettes, I thought they didn't necessarily know that the camera was there.
Yeah.
It's just kind of giving you an idea of what's happening. And the camera's keeping it. Not that, oh, I saw on the camera you're doing this. So maybe kind of a weird thing. But I guess also it just signifies that they're aware that Jay is sort of flirting, if you will, with Sami Zayn, or the idea of being, kind of in cahoots with Sami Zayn, and they're aware of it. But I
Even
think
more than that, like, and this is why I don't think they needed to do the camera thing, because mid-show, after they beat Braun Strowman and Ricochet to retain their tag team titles, and we'll get more into the match in a little bit, but Jimmy and Jey are walking backstage, and Jimmy and Jey are having a little bit of a heart-to-heart there, and Paul Heyman is hiding behind one of the big pillars in the arena.
that was hilarious.
Yes, and then he comes out and he's talking to Jimmy, and he's like, like he's hiding behind the pillar, but like they want you to know that he's there, but they don't want Jimmy and Jey to know he's there. So we can see this, Paul Heyman in his bright blue suit, but for some reason Jimmy and Jey can't. But okay, we'll go with it. So Paul comes out and asks Jimmy.
Came out. Like he's like always an eye on everything, and he's such a little weasel, Paul Heyman. But he comes like in, and he's always just lying.
But he does that to test Jimmy, and he asks Jimmy, "Did Jey say anything to you?" And Jimmy's doing no. So already Paul knows that Jimmy's not being straight with him. So right there, that Paul's going to get on the phone with Roman Reigns, and Paul's going to be telling him that something is not quite right with the Uso brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was planted there, and then yes, we got the Sami Zayn and Jey kind of running into each other near some trailers. Okay, and some good line there from Sami, telling to Jey, not only thanking him for and saying it meant the world with him when Jey wouldn't participate in the beatdown after Royal Rumble, but Sami looks at Jey and says, "I acknowledge you." So they're taking this back a couple of years to the fight for supremacy in the family.
Yeah,
and Sammy's throwing that C now, and then the fist bump. Sami goes for the fist bump, and Jey, after looking around, goes for the fist bump. So now I'm thinking they don't know the cameras are there. Because he looks around to make sure no one can see him do the fist bump. Like you think he'd be able to see a camera operator 4 feet in front of his face.
It's interesting, and this is a little off topic, but I'll just go with it. I saw there was an angle with NXT, and Shawn Michaels is like their head of creative there. Okay. And one of the wrestlers is yelling at Shawn Michaels, and he's just at a laptop like this, and the wrestler's right here. So it has like a realism, like, oh, this camera is hot, and it's just catching all this.
Okay.
And it looked like a million times better than the way they portray it now, which is like there's a giant cameraman in front of them catching all this dialogue, you know. But anyways, let's not overthink it.
Dissension in the bloodline.
Yeah, dissension in the bloodline. I like the segments tonight, but I'll go on record and just say, anytime Heyman has the mic and he shoots a promo, it's good. It's at least always good. So I'm always a big fan of whenever he comes out on the mic, it's going to be good enough that I think it'll be acceptable, especially for a Smackdown. You're kind of building to the pay-per-view. And also, I would say, I don't want to plug it too much or push it too much, but with the Vince McMahon thing, the super long promo in the beginning of the show. I mean, yes. I was looking at one point, it was like Sami Zayn would just go on and on and on and on and on. And I was just like, we're about 12 minutes in here. Like, this is quite the talking segment.
We could get to some timestamps, but let's get back to the opening segment, because Paul Heyman does at least a couple of really cool things I saw. Number one, he gets in the ring and he mentions Sami first to see if the crowd will react. And they do, and they start cheering and they start chanting for Sami Zayn. That's good. He mentions Cody next just to keep that in people's minds. But he made a point to mention Sammy first to see if the crowd would go along and be into that because, let's go off topic a little bit here, or at least expand the topic, because you and I have been watching SmackDown now since late September. I counted, we've seen about 20 SmackDowns.
Mhm.
Tonight is the worst episode of SmackDown I've seen in those 20.
Whoa.
This was bad. So let's just talk about, let's expand the scope a little bit here. Years ago, Batista won the Royal Rumble and was going to WrestleMania. And that was the long plan. That was the long game. The Batista would come back, win the Royal Rumble, go to WrestleMania, and everybody would love it. The problem was that there was this comedy wrestler getting way over. And the crowd wanted to see this comedy wrestler be like, get his shot and see if he could be more of a serious wrestler. And they wound up having to do something to get Daniel Bryan into that main event because the crowd just was more behind what was happening spontaneously in the episodic weekly television show than in this long game that was, centrally planned by the boys in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they're having the same problem now.
Good problem.
Cody Rhodes is the long game,
Mm-hmm.
but the crowd is behind Sami Zayn.
Yeah. They're in a little bit of a pickle because there's some serious concern, I'd say, if Roman goes over Sami, and then what do they do with Sami for WrestleMania? And then if Cody Rhodes wins, then is the crowd going to crap all over it, Because they could be like, oh, we wanted Sami. Mm-hmm. So it's a good problem to have because they have two baby faces that are hot. Which is better than their typical zero baby faces that are hot.
And having to bring someone out of retirement.
They're like, well, we'll give Stone Cold $5 million to make an appearance, or whatever kind of absurd dollar amount they have to pay him. But yeah, I know it is. That's a great comparison. The Batista Daniel Bryan thing, and Daniel Bryan's a stud, so it was almost like, yeah, you got to. I mean, Daniel Bryan has had a better career than Batista has. So,
yeah, at this point, yeah, but a few years ago, you didn't know because like Batista had been a main event guy, Daniel Bryan hadn't. But it's WrestleMania is the pay-per-view that they plan months and months and months in advance. They need a main event months and months in advance. And they really try and just get there. Like they put that on the bulletin board and that's their goal. And then they figure out how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then something just happens. It's, it's control. It's command and control versus spontaneous order. Okay. The Cody Rhodes angle is command and control. Sami Zayn is spontaneous order. And maybe building up this Elimination Chamber pay-per-view is the way to get out of that. But like you're saying, what if Sammy's still hot and the Cody thing feels a little forced after Elimination Chamber still? Like, I think Sami did a good job tonight. Right from the opening segment, he shows up out of the crowd in the hoodie again. He does not attack Paul Heyman, but he cuts a really good promo. He says, a month ago, everybody would have been out here. There's no way Paul Heyman would have been out there by himself. A month ago, there would have been some unity.
Sure.
This is 2 shows in a row because apparently Paul Heyman was stuck in the same position on Raw with a promo with a well-coiffed and wearing a suit Cody Rhodes. So same thing, Raw and SmackDown. Paul Heyman out there by himself, no bloodline. And Sami says, the bloodline is on its way out. Like that's his quote. The bloodline is on its way out. And then they keep going back to that. The rest of the show, there's little backstage cuts to Jimmy trying to get Jey on the phone and it not working for a while until finally they have their match. Ricochet and Braun Strowman versus the Usos. They announce Ricochet and Braun Strowman. They announce Jimmy. And then Jey appears up in the crowd and marches through the crowd into the ring and joins the match. And so it was kind of like he's with Jimmy, but he's not with everybody else. And so I don't know if you want to go into that match now, but I mean, Bloodline is the top story here.
No, for sure. I think Bloodline's the top story. I think they did a pretty good job kind of keeping that simmering. And I mean, Sami Zayn kind of was like, yeah, the ship's sinking. Jump off now. And it does seem like it's sinking, and it could be something that Jey could be interested in doing. Like, why would why would Jey even be motivated to jump on board with Sami? It's like, oh, this ship is sinking, get off. It's almost like when a company's about to do layoffs, and the revenue's down, and it's going to happen at some point. Maybe you start updating your LinkedIn. That's what, this is what, this is really what Sami is saying. Like, maybe it's time to update the LinkedIn. We know this shit's going down. So, I think that those segments were pretty cool. And I do want to, I know we're kind of hopping around here, but I do want to talk a little bit about how you think this is the worst SmackDown that you've seen in our since we've been doing it.
Sure.
The crowd was dead.
Yes.
I mean, no matter what was going on, I don't know what was going on with the crowd. And I looked it up. This is some little stadium in Connecticut, and they weren't into any of it. And I don't know, you wouldn't typically get a SmackDown or a live TV show with WWE where there'd be no pop for pretty much the entire show. They were just sitting there. So I don't know if they had given out a lot of free tickets to a lot of people that aren't wrestling fans, and they're there just sort of bored and confused, but crowd was just dead.
I'll defend the crowd for a little bit. They look to be into the opening segment, but then some problems happen. For instance, the opening segment finishes at 8:16. So we're starting here on the East Coast. We're in New Jersey. SmackDown starts at 8. It's 8:16 by the time that segment finishes. They go to commercial. We come back, there's a squash match. I'm not repeating myself. There were 2 squash matches.
I know.
We then get the announcement for Ricochet and Braun Strowman versus the Usos. The announcement happens. The match finally starts. It's 8:51. We've seen nothing but promos and squash, and the squash matches helped no one. Like the Banger Brothers, Sheamus and Drew McIntyre beat Hit Row. That helped no one. Squash matches usually help the team that wins. That match didn't help Sheamus and Drew. It didn't help Hit Row. And then we have Lacey Evans versus Carmen Harris. Carmen Harris, probably a local woman wrestler that they just pulled off the street, gave her a good outfit, and let her wrestle. This match doesn't help Lacey Evans. It's a squash. It doesn't make Lacey look strong. Makes Carmen look like she can bump and work.
I know.
She's the only one who looked good in the first hour. She's the only one who looked good. We're never going to see her again. She's the only one who looked even halfway decent. So now they're into Ricochet, Braun Strowman versus the Usos. The match finally starts at 8:51. We get 4 minutes of wrestling. They go to commercial at 8:55. They're back at 8:58.
Yeah.
Finally, there's a double hot tag at 9 o'clock. We're halfway into the show. It's an hour into the show. And the first time the crowd has something that's to cheer about that's happening in the ring. It's 9 o'clock on a Friday. The regular couch shuffles in. No. It's not Piano Man here. It's 9 o'clock. It's an hour into this show. We get some decent things out of that. But then the rest of the night, Natalya's in the ring, trashing Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler comes out to answer it, and they say, I'm not a cheap knockoff of Ronda Rousey. So, of course, Ronda Rousey's music hits, and she comes out. And then it's a double beatdown. It's Ronda and Shayna versus Natalya. Shotzi comes out for the save, but she gets laid out. And then Natalya gets laid out. And, okay, so it was a match, but it wasn't a match. It wasn't a match, really. I mean, people were in street clothes, except for Shotzi. Like, Shotzi showed up to wrestle. Everybody else was in street clothes. Perhaps I'm assuming, perhaps that's how Shotzi dresses in her everyday life. I don't know. Then we've got Sammy and Jay backstage, which is good, but it's backstage. Then the best part of the night happens. A 30-second LA Knight interview where he says, I'm not talking about Bray Wyatt. I'm not talking about the past. I'm looking forward. And I went, thank goodness. Maybe they have something for him. But then we're back to a squash match. It's Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green versus Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan.
Oh, yeah, it's another squash.
It's a squash on Chelsea. Like, Chelsea Green is, I think, new to SmackDown. She's a Karen. She's always asking for the manager. So,
Okay.
and they do this thing where Sonya and Chelsea get thrown together because Adam Pearce is annoyed with both of them, constantly bugging him. So he throws them in a match with Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan. So they have a couple of spots in this match where Liv ducks and Sonya hits Chelsea. Later, Chelsea accidentally hits Sonya back. And then finally, Liv pins Chelsea after great sequence if they're a well-oiled tag team. Raquel does that one-arm power bomb on Chelsea, tags in Liv Morgan, and then power bombs Liv onto Chelsea. Liv gets the pin. So this is a squash match, and I'm scratching my head here. Liv and Raquel are friendly, and they're working as a well-oiled tag team. They have an elimination chamber match in 8 days. And the last time we saw them on SmackDown, they were getting into a fight over who was going to do what to who in the Royal Rumble, and they had like a grudge match. So maybe do they have a history as a tag team where they've been a well-oiled machine?
I don't know what that match was. I do want to say, because we're kind of doing a high-level overview, I was just writing my notes for the match or for the entire SmackDown, and I just didn't even really have much to discuss because they weren't really giving you anything.
I wrote down finishes.
I just wrote who won and
who won,
and also when you talk about the first hour when they went squash then squash and how it didn't help anybody. The only person I think that it could have helped is the person that is the jobber that is working the indie shows with 25 people, like
Carmen Harris.
Carmen Harris.
Good showing, Carmen Harris, if they got your name right. I don't think they what they put on the screen may not have been what Wade Barrett kept saying during the match. I think it was Carmen Harris.
And then in addition to that, the other person in Hit Row that's not Top Dollar,
Ashante.
He
is the Adonis.
Could at least take some of the bumps.
He bumps well, yes.
And you could see Top Dollar is hidden in the corner and never got tagged in because they're just like,
oh
no, he never got tagged in. They're just like, we have him on contract. He can't wrestle. Just throw him in the corner. He went out. He tagged in. He did one back bump, and you're just like, this guy is so late. Vince is. I cannot believe he's still out there, but it doesn't really help anybody there because you're like, oh yeah, like Hit Row is the jobber team. So and
we already knew Adonis could bump. It's not like he showed us anything in this match that made us go, wow, like nobody got helped by the first hour.
Nobody, right? It was kind of rough, and I guess that it's that old thinking, like it's the workers and the show's responsibility to get the crowd into it. So they weren't giving them a lot, and then you have to also think that in between when they go to commercial on TV, they go to commercial in the stadium too. So they'll actually show commercials in the stadium while they're showing our commercials. And they're
Really? I haven't been to a live. Okay, huh?
So they were getting the promo, 2 squashes, and commercials for an hour.
For an
Like,
hour.
it's not like in between they're firing the crowd up. No, they're just like, subscribe to Peacock, subscribe to this, buy the T-shirts here. All that crap that you're seeing on TV, they do it in real life.
Okay, so if there's not a match going on and they're in just TV break, yeah, they've got to do something for the crowd.
Yeah, they just fill it with crap, and it's not. And that's probably it shows on TV because the crowd is just sitting there like, oh man,
Yeah, there was nothing, and then by the time they get to this fatal 4-way, the crowd is dead.
Yeah,
It's not a very good fatal 4-way because they do this gimmick every now and then, fatal 4-way for the number 1 contender to the IC belt. We saw this when Rey Mysterio went over months ago to get his shot at Gunther, and he wound up pinning Ricochet. And that was one of the matches where we saw, like, man, Ricochet looks good even if he loses. I don't think anybody looked good in this match, and the crowd was not into it. It was one of those weird fatal 4-ways where, guys take bumps and they're just out for a minute or two.
a lot of the spots with Karrion Kross, they were just too slow. Like, they were developing so slowly, and that crowd was dead. Like, they needed action and violence, and I mean, it's time to pick it up. It's the main event. They're dead, but they kind of just stayed the course of whatever they kind of scripted beforehand or discussed beforehand, and it felt like it just was a little too slow and needed a little bit more gas. But they also don't help themselves by putting a fatal 4-way on. I don't think
they also don't help themselves with a couple of luchadors who are trying to do luchador stuff with a couple of just big lumbering guys who would be good if they could do bigger lumbering guy things. And some of the spots, like you were saying, it was too slow developing when they were trying to set up either Santos Escobar or Rey Mysterio doing something on either Karrion Kross or Madcap Moss. This match, by the way, since we're mentioning it now, Madcap Moss wins. He's going to face Gunther next Friday for the IC title. He hits a top turnbuckle elbow onto Rey Mysterio and gets the pin. 1, 2, 3. The most action-packed parts of this match may have been the cutaways to either Scarlett on the outside or Emma on the outside, cheering on their, boyfriends. I don't know. I mean, Scarlett is like, I think, Karrion Kross's real life wife. I don't know what Emma and Madcap is, but it's the valets on the outside. I think were the most interesting part of the match is like some of their facial expressions and them getting excited. But
yeah, which that isn't good. But also, when you have when you have a fatal 4-way, there's already so much going on. To include a double manager in there, so you have like 6 people, it just makes it a bit more hectic. Do you really need? You already have a fatal 4-way. Do you need the 2 ballets to even add anything to it? It just seems like it's going to add more confusion.
Sure. And they keep the director keeps cutting to them in the crowd chest. Now, sometimes they were involved, like Scarlett got involved a couple of times, outside interference. Okay, that makes sense. But I don't need to see Emma go when Madcap gets hit. Like, show me Madcap getting hit. Like, and Madcap's reaction to getting hit. Like, how's he selling it? What's he doing? Like, I don't need to see Emma selling Madcap. Like, that's Madcap's job, right?
Right.
And I don't know. So we had one match tonight that wasn't either a squash or just awkwardly slow and anticlimactic. Do you have things in the tag team title match that you want to go into?
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear kind of your perspective of the tag team title. I think at least from a spot perspective, the finish was hot, which is good. They built up to it. The crowd was sort of dead from promo squash,
right,
and endless commercials in between all of that as well. So they're like 15 minutes of crap. Well, and then, toward the end of that tag match, I think it really got over. And I love the finish with
it turned into a great match.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you want to describe the finish there? I've got some notes on it, but like you're saying, I mean, it took Jey Uso appearing in the crowd and then 9 minutes of wrestling for the crowd to finally go, oh yeah, we're at a show and this is fun. And there's something going on that we're interested in. But Braun Strowman kind of gets a bad rap as a guy who's just a big guy. There was Jey hit a top turn crossbody onto Braun for a 2.5 count, and it was a great late kick out by Braun. He did a good job of selling for the smaller wrestler, not only taking the bump, but not like, powering over it right away like the big man. Like he sold that well for Jey. It was a really good mini sequence there for Braun because, even though he's bigger than these guys, I mean, the Usos are they can fly around. They're very athletic. They use the top ropes, but they're not luchadors. Like they are power wrestlers. These guys can go. So Braun selling, a top rope crossbody from Jey for a 2 3/4. Okay, that's believable. They've been wrestling for about 10 minutes at that point. That's believable. I like that. I like seeing that from Braun. A little later, Braun's going for the Strowman Express, which is goofy. And I was glad to see Jey duck it and Braun to just go flying over the announce table.
Yeah.
Like, all right, there we go. I like that. That's good. Other great things in this match was this match was showing that Jey still cares for Jimmy. He still cares for their team. Couple of great saves by Jey as Jimmy's getting pinned.
There was one that was believable
once by pulling Ricochet off, and then another one by pulling Jimmy out. And then the finishing sequence, Jimmy's getting knocked around by Ricochet. So we've got a blind tag by Jey on the outside. Ricochet winds up hitting a shooting star off the top turnbuckle onto Jimmy. But as he hits it with such force, every now and then when they hit something that involves them not only jumping but spinning, they bounce. And this was so well done by Ricochet, by Jey, by everybody with the timing, but really by Ricochet. Ricochet nails the shooting star off the top turnbuckle and bounces off into perfect position because after the blind tag, Jey runs to an adjacent corner, goes up to the top turnbuckle himself. As soon as Ricochet bounces and lands on his back, Jey is off of that top turnbuckle for a splash and gets the 1, 2, 3 on Ricochet. Great finishing sequence, something I haven't seen before.
No, I haven't seen it either.
And something that required all three guys involved in it to really be on point, not only with the timing, but with their ring positioning.
Sure.
What a great finish that was. That was the thing you cheer for. And then the show goes off the air with a great main event. Oh, no, it's only like 9-10.
It felt like...
We've still got weird vignettes, a brawl, and 2 squash matches to go.
I know. I mean, yeah, kind of a weird timing for that match, too. You think it would put that at the main, but I guess they were just like, oh no, we're going to do squash, the real match, and then number 1 4-way contender for the number 1 contender against Gunther. The guy that's
I like that match where it went, the tag team match, because they had to do stuff after it. They had to have Jimmy and Jey backstage after the win. They had to have Heyman finding them backstage, sneaking around, spying, doing his surveillance. They had to have, after those two split up, they had to have Sammy waiting in the wings there for Jey. So they had a lot to do after that. The problem really wasn't where this match was placed as much as it was that this match was the only good thing in 2 hours of TV.
Yeah. You know, that was, it was definitely easily match of the night. But it was a good match. And I do have to say, I'm liking the Ricochet Braun Strowman tag team. I think that those two guys were a little lost in the shuffle. I know they gave Ricochet the push with the tournament win, and then he had the really good match against Gunther. But when we first started watching, Ricochet was lost. He was just kind of jobbing, and he was putting on good matches, and he was, taking a back seat, but just losing to everybody. And now they kind of positioned him with Braun, and they have some good chemistry, and they have a good concept.
They do.
Ricochet goes in, he does all of the dirty work, all the complex stuff, setting up the match, all the high fly flippy stuff, and then you can tag Braun in, and he just is the freight train, huge guy, and he gets the hot tag, and he looks like a guy that should get the hot tag, right?
Yeah, right.
You tag him, and he's going to destroy whoever is in front of him. So I think that tag team is good, and then Jey and Jimmy just keep the straps on them for as long as necessary. I love it.
Something about straps. Good. The belts being on a guy that you just brought up. We are in a weird era in WWE of unusually long title reigns on the men's side. I don't know much about the U.S. title because it's basically defended on Raw.
Yeah, we don't see that one.
But let's do some numbers here. 894 days for Roman Reigns.
It's crazy.
Longest since Hogan in the 80s. Usos 572 with tonight's win. Longest ever. Gunther 245 days as the IC champion. Longest reign since last millennium. We are in an era of, and I don't know if this is creative, just found 3 teams or performers, that they just said, yeah, these guys are generational talents. Let's give them all these things. Or if there's been a concerted effort to get away from I don't know, maybe it was the ruthless aggression era, the attitude era, and the era leading up to here where the belts just switched too often.
Oh, hot potato.
Whatever. I don't know if this is a Triple H thing, being in charge of creative since the summer. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't read the dirt sheets or have sources inside WWE to know how much they've talked about this. But it is interesting to me, like really curious how the WWE is changing from what they have been for a couple of decades, really, into these long drawn out title reigns where it's a big deal that these guys have it. And of course, they found the right guys to have it.
Yeah.
The belt is on Roman Reigns. Okay, if you're going to have somebody hold the belt for longer than anybody since Hulk Hogan in the 80s, Roman Reigns. If you're going to have a tag team hold the belt for longer than anybody, Jimmy and Jey, yeah, they can go. If you're going to have somebody hold the IC title for longer than you've had in a while, yeah, Gunther. Gunther can go.
And maybe tonight you can just sort of see a gap when Gunther isn't wrestling on SmackDown.
Yeah.
This shift down for all the other performers and all the in-ring work is pretty significant because you have to just, he's just put on, pretty much always puts on good matches on SmackDown. Yes. And we are now, when he's out of the picture or he's just waiting around for somebody to win and he's not going to be wrestling that night, you see kind of a dip in, all right, who are the other men's singles competitors in this company? I think the next one up that I even saw tonight might have been Rey Mysterio. I think he really might be the next best guy on their roster for SmackDown for the men's singles stuff.
Maybe
And
Madcap Moss. I mean, they're going to finally give this guy a little bit of a push, it seems like.
and
Gunther is interesting. You mentioned that. We see Gunther a lot on SmackDown. He's like the TV title, that IC belt. He wrestles a lot on TV.
a lot.
And, he like he wasn't involved in Survivor Series, but his belt he was wrestling in title matches, defending it before and after Survivor Series on SmackDown. He was in Royal Rumble. In the Royal Rumble match, his belt was not defended there, but he defends it on SmackDowns.
Oh
He's
yeah.
apparently not defending it on Elimination Chamber, but the night before Elimination Chamber, we're getting Gunther versus Madcap Moss. So Gunther is the guy who keeps a belt front and center on SmackDown, and it's a worthy belt because it's him who's carrying it. The Usos have been working a lot, Raw and SmackDown, since they have both belts. So we got that championship match tonight. Charlotte Flair, we didn't get tonight. We got an interview with Michael Cole with her, but that belt wasn't on the line. She was getting interviewed. SmackDown Tag Champions, we haven't seen Damage Control in a while. They've been on Raw in this Damage Control versus Becky Lynch feud. And I'm disappointed because, I mean, Io Sky can work. She's awesome. And even Dakota Kai, like she holds up her end of the bargain there, but Io Sky especially. Like, they're fantastic matches when they're in the ring. And we just haven't seen them in a while. Like, we're not seeing any of the people with the belts, any of the people who could be challenging for belts. We're seeing Hit Row get squashed. We're
Yeah.
seeing someone we've never seen before get beat by Lacey Evans for no reason in a match that doesn't make Lacey Evans look good. We're seeing a Karen character and Sonya Deville, who's she's got the bratty, annoying thing down. But like, there's no reason for them to get squashed. It wasn't for anything. It was just like Adam Pearce doesn't like them, so he threw them in there with Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan, who inexplicably are an awesome tag team.
Right?
I don't get any of this. I don't get anything that happened tonight except the tag team title match.
Yeah. Lacey
And it
Evans.
wasn't like it was so great in the ring that it made me forget that there was no build to it, really.
Lacey Evans has been in the WWE since 2016. It's 2023. Okay. She doesn't need a squash. We know who she is. So right. She's kind of had all kinds of weird gimmicks. They're trying to get her over. They've done a ton for her. It's like insane. I just can't. And you see her tonight in the squash, and you're like, I mean, is she? It's so weird the way they've positioned her, because she's in the military, which you cheer for. She looks physically, she looks good.
She's formidable. Yes.
She's physically attractive, is what I'm kind of alluding to. So she kind of is tough to
that boo too. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it's tough for her to boo her, but you're supposed to boo her for some reason. I know that they're trying to go with the Sergeant Slaughter angle, but what was the Slaughter angle when he turned heel? Wasn't he do you remember that at all, when he was the heel, or what? He
was an Iraqi sympathizer. The last great run with that was he was an Iraqi sympathizer,
which is
during the first Gulf War. We're talking 90s, and this led to kind of a blow off against Hulk Hogan. I don't know if he continued it against Ultimate Warrior or somebody else. There may have been runs early, like way early, maybe late 70s, early 80s, when Sergeant Slaughter was heel for a while. But there have been other guys who've been kind of heelish as military people, because there's that tough drill sergeant guy attitude where, this guy he's too much. Like, there've been other guys like that, but yes,
the big boss man too. He's the
warden, the prison warden. Yeah,
prison warden or police officer that was too rough with people.
Yes.
But it was weird. So Sergeant Slaughter, when he turned heel, he was a face and then turned heel, and there was a huge storyline behind it. Where Lacey Evans comes out, haven't seen her at all, and now she's just a heel, and now she is squashing somebody who I don't know if that really makes you a heel. She wins. She's dominant. She gives a dominating performance to win. Yeah, cheer for it. I don't know. So, anyways,
She's committed to it. She's drawn with the crowd. She's like
yeah,
telling them, salute me, salute me. And then when she's got Carmen Harris down on the mat, pretty much, got her bell rung or whatever, she's doing the salute with Carmen's hand going, salute me, salute me. So she's committed to being a heel. She's doing heel things. You brought this up at the Royal Rumble when Bayley came out for that long entrance and was like mocking the crowd, not going to slap hands, but not slapping hands, taking someone's sign and tearing it up. So there are people who know, like, okay, you told me to be a heel. I'm going to be a heel. I'm going to do the little things that a heel would do. And Lacey seems to do that, but I don't mind Lacey being a heel. I just don't know what this match does for her.
Yeah, for sure. There are some, speaking of little things that people were doing tonight, I guess as we're kind of going through, I mean, SmackDown, they didn't give
We're trying to salvage this show, man.
I tried my best. I'm trying to give a positive spin to what was a bad show. So the one match I saw, or the one spot I saw, is people love to count.
Yes.
So Drew McIntyre they go 1, 2, 3, and then he does some sort of running Larry thing, or at least attempts it, and they bailed out. But so Drew McIntyre's got a counting thing, and then of course Sheamus has the
10 beats of the Baron,
where he punches the guy in the chest, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they go like 18, 19, 20. Like it goes on and on to like 18, 19, 20. So it
goes until the crowd can't count anymore, because now Sheamus is out of rhythm, hitting him too fast. And at some point, you can't say 21, 22 as fast as Sheamus is hitting him.
Yeah, but that is the stuff, those little things can cheap ways to get the crowd into it. And especially because the crowd was bored tonight. And quite frankly, it felt a little bit like maybe they had just given a lot of tickets away to non-wrestling fans that were just a bit confused. So I don't know.
Maybe, but even if you're a wrestling fan, like you're a wrestling fan, I'm a wrestling fan.
I was pretty bored. I almost like I had to really focus sometimes, because I was started to like watch videos on my phone and that wasn't that. I'm like, oh no, I have to talk about this later, or whatever. So, yeah.
I don't snack a lot when I'm watching this because I'm writing stuff, I'm paying attention. I was doing a lot of snacking. Like I was just bored eating.
I think the person that got the most heat tonight was probably Roseanne Barr, because I saw about 3 or 4 adverts with her and her comeback.
Okay.
So that's like one of my biggest, that's probably like my biggest takeaway, second biggest takeaway from the show. The first was, okay, Bloodline, cool. Jey Uso's back. There's still a lot of heat there. Okay, that's the one takeaway. Second takeaway, Roseanne Barr is back, and she's doing a comedy show. And that's all, because they advertised it like crazy. So that's what I gathered.
Is it a Roseanne Barr show, or is it like a Roseanne Barr documentary that Fox is producing? I don't pay too much attention to the commercials, because the commercials are my time to like catch my breath, make sure that I've got everything where I want them in the notes, and God, yeah, it is bad when the second most memorable thing to you about a show is a commercial that they play 3 or 4 times.
Hey, maybe that's what the WWE wants sometimes. It's like, get the advertiser over so they continue to pay us, right?
Yeah, put over the sponsors.
Put them over. Yeah. Well, maybe we can talk a little bit about this one, but it was encouraging to see them just say, we're not doing anything else with Bray Wyatt and LA Knight. I'm going to move on to other things.
Right.
And he went out. He did maybe just like a 15-minute segment, or 15-second, 30-second spot where he said, let me talk to you. We ain't talking about Bray Wyatt anymore. We're moving on from that. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
We're not talking about past. We're looking forward. Mm-hmm. Looking forward, he said. And there was no Bray on tonight's show. So apparently they've got something for LA Knight before they've got another chapter for Bray. And Bray was the one getting pushed. So we'll see. I mean, he hasn't been announced for Elimination Chamber. They haven't announced him for next SmackDown. I don't know. And again, I don't know if Bray stays on SmackDown or if they bounce him over to Raw. So we don't know. So LA Knight doing the interview tonight gives me some hope that not only do they have something for him, but that maybe it will continue on SmackDown.
And for typically, I like when they're patient and they let the storylines develop and they're going a certain direction. But for this one, pull the plug. He's too good. Have him wrestle somebody else. Have him be the mouthpiece in the segments when they are having them against somebody that's a singles competitor, and we'll go from there. And
the other thing about that feud is I think they got to where they needed to go. They got to a pay-per-view. They did the gimmick with their advertiser. So, Mountain Dew paid a bunch of money for the pitch black gimmick. They got Bray over. They got Uncle Howdy over. They went through the stage at the end. I mean, LA Knight was basically beat up by two guys. And whatever that was supposed to accomplish, I hope they accomplished it. Turn the page.
Yeah. All right, Dom. Well, anything else from this SmackDown that comes to mind here?
Only I've heard some people questioning how big of a deal this Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns match can be when there's been so little time to build it. And I wonder if they're having to move too quickly on this. And if it seems like it's too fast, because the whole Sami in the bloodline angle was such a slow burn and it was wonderful. And now like the collapse of it is like the snap of a finger. Like it's all falling apart that quickly. I don't know if that's just because of the timing of the pay-per-views and what they think they have to get done, but this is one of those things where, again, I don't know how long in advance they've been making their storyboards, but if there's any way to go with the audience on this one, because the audience is taken to Sami, if there's any way to get this with Sami and Roman, that it doesn't just fizzle out in the 3 weeks from Royal Rumble to Elimination Chamber. That's it. They're 3 weeks apart. If there's any way to continue this after them, if there's any way to get it into WrestleMania in another 7 weeks, if there's any way to do something with the other members of the bloodline, because another question might be like, is this Roman's last hurrah? Like if he drops the belts, is he going to be sticking around WWE like Drew McIntyre and Sheamus have for years, still going out there, still performing? Or is Roman Reigns heading to movies and trying his best to take care of his health because he's gotten a longer career than maybe anybody thought he would have when the original leukemia diagnosis came through and he had to leave a promising professional football career? So, I mean, is this the winding down of Roman? And when he's done here, he's just done.
Yeah. I think he's probably earned quite the vacation. At this point, when he drops the title, he'll probably be gone and off screen for a while, and they'll bring him back, and it'll be crazy when it comes back. So I think that's probably the plan. I don't mind. I know he's supposed to lose the title to Cody Rhodes. Like I know that, but I don't mind. I just think he's doing really well. I don't even care. I'm like, just keep it on him.
Are you disappointed if he doesn't drop the belts either at Elimination Chamber or WrestleMania?
No, I just think he's fine.
Me neither.
He's the best.
I think he's a good heel champion. He's a good champion. He's a good heel, and he's putting them together. He's a good heel champion.
Yeah, he's doing both, right? He's a great champ, and he's a great heel at the same time. And then you could always have people chasing, and that really helps develop the baby faces.
Ric
I'm
Flair was a heel champ, was a heel for most of his championship runs, or at least heel tweener. And you can make great storylines with babyface chasing the heel, like the
yeah.
babyface chasing the belt. Like, and the babyface doesn't get it right away. Like, oh, the babyface won it right away. Like, no, make them earn it. Like, really make them earn it. And that's another reason why I'm wondering if having Cody go over Roman, I mean, has Cody earned it? Is this going to be their first match ever? And Cody's just going to take the belts from the longest reigning champion since 1987?
I feel like, yeah, right. When you put
I'd
it that,
rather Sammy take it from him because Sammy's been out there wrestling and they have a history.
the storyline's way better. The poster probably, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the storyline is probably going to be better, but uh, Cody did pretty well as a face champion or a face in AEW, and he kind of got stale pretty quickly though. So just be aware of that one because
Okay.
he was way over in AEW, and probably around the time when he was exiting, he was sort of a weird tweener, and he was in that Cena situation right away where people were
Okay.
booing and cheering, and he was, yeah,
Let's go, Cody. Cody sucks.
yeah, so it started to get a little fuzzy, and then he just bounced from AEW. He went back to WWE, and he's been, I mean, he's been getting crazy responses, mostly because I think a lot of the crowds, a lot of people at the pay-per-views and stuff have watched AEW and see him there, so they like him from that. But
How strange is this that the WWE is bringing in a guy who was huge in another promotion and going along with it that, yes, he's huge.
I
Like, they
know
don't usually bring people in like this.
they usually bring him in. They usually bring people in that are that they could potentially just kind of squash and beat up on. When they purchased WCW, for example, they just jobbed everybody out. Like it could have been this amazing angle with WWE versus
Yeah.
WCW, but for the most part, all the WWE guys are going over, and then everybody else has to job at the WCW guys. So
Yeah, it's like when a new guy comes in, it becomes like it's WWE versus whatever his last employer was. And so
yeah,
they want the WWE to win. I mean, is this unusual that Cody comes, I mean, after leaving the WWE and becoming a bigger star somewhere else, that he comes back and WWE is acknowledging that he's a star rather than, putting him back almost to where he was when he left, where, yeah, okay, he's maybe in the running for a US belt or an intercontinental shot. But I mean, since he's been back, it's almost been day one. They've been planning for him to just go to WrestleMania and be
I
the
think
be the guy.
I think the thing with Cody is I almost can guarantee, or I can almost guarantee, I have a feeling that when they had the meeting and when he was going to cross from AEW and he was in New Japan too, when he was going to come back, I think he probably was told or promised or had some sort of creative rights where he said like I want to win the title if I come back, and they said okay. So I feel
Okay,
like
well, I understand that, but why give that to Cody Rhodes? You wouldn't do it for Booker T. You wouldn't do it for Diamond Dallas Page. You brought up the WCW coming over. You wouldn't do it for Scott Steiner, all their champions. You wouldn't do it for Sting when he finally jumped.
because
It
Vince,
took a while for AJ Styles in his prime to earn his way through the WWE,
yeah,
which frankly you should do. Like, yeah, make the guy earn it. Like, why all of a sudden for Cody Rhodes promise that? Like
I
he jumped a fledgling AEW ship.
I think it might be because if you think about Vince's history, he is hell bent on destroying the competition at all costs, even if it hurts the wrestling business as a whole. So he must have just been talking to Cody Rhodes. He's like, get their star off of the show. We'll pay him, and he can do whatever he wants, even if it makes our show worse. Just get him away from AEW and get their ratings down, and let's squash them out.
That's
This
an
is
unvince like Vince like thing. If that was a Vince,
this might be the new school Vince, where he is hell bent on just destroying AEW, because he took NXT and put it head to head against AEW, and they got really beat pretty badly in the ratings, and they were losing money by doing that. And it was all just, it was never the initial plan. It was just like, oh, AEWs exist, like let's put NXT against it, and it didn't work out. But yeah, so that's probably that's my guess. And this is all speculation, and I'll tell you why we're doing the speculation. Because SmackDown tonight was not good. We talked Roseanne Barr. We talked about a 15-second segment with LA Knight, probably more than any of the other matches.
That's what we popped for tonight. Like, whoa, right?
That's right. That's who was.
He hasn't been buried yet. Yeah.
He's not buried. LA Knight is not buried. Dom, anything else for you for tonight's SmackDown?
Nothing else. It seems like the Elimination Chamber card is set. We'll see what next week's SmackDown is like. It's going to be held in Montreal, so the same city where Elimination Chamber is being held. So we might get a live SmackDown, not something taped. So be interesting to see how much they're able to do the night before a pay-per-view with some brutal matches. We know we're going to get Gunther. Looks like we're getting a tag match again. Viking Raiders, Banger Bros, maybe. We're getting this women's tag team match that they set up tonight. So we may be getting some decent in-ring, non-squash stuff next week, including Gunther. So, that Gunther versus Madcap Moss. This is going to be Madcap Moss's match of his life, right?
Yes.
This is his chance. He doesn't have to win, but you can't look bad in a match against Gunther.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because he's been, from what we've seen, it just seems as if though he always wrestles Karrion Kross. And that's the two that they've had tangoing.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen him against anybody else. So if he doesn't look at least good against Gunther, then that's a problem probably. So interesting. He's got a shot. Maybe, he'll go out there and put together a good match, and, they can use that then to kind of springboard the momentum from the Gunther match. For example, did it with Braun. He had the good match with Gunther. You're like, okay, he's back. He's wrestling a real match. He can go. And then they team him with Ricochet, and him and Ricochet have some momentum. So maybe they could just keep using Braun or Gunther as the guy that, can give people some momentum, and you get an idea of, Gunther's an unstoppable beast, but they're wrestling good matches. So it's a good system they might have in place there.
Oh yeah, you put the Gunther match on your video reel that you send out as your resume.
Right.
Like, I was in this match here, and look how great I looked.
Yeah, right. It is everybody's highlight match, which says a lot about Gunther.
Yeah.
All right, Dom. Well,
I think we did a good job of not burying SmackDown, even though this was not a good show. So we did not bury the lead, and we did not bury the SmackDown entirely. Yay us.
We pivoted to a point to make it a little bit more digestible, the worst SmackDown that we have seen since we started doing the show.
Yes.
This is Don't Bury the Lead. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Dom, thanks so much for doing this. Like and subscribe. Why not? You're already here. It's free. It's helpful for us. We're getting a little bit more subscribers, a little bit more views on the shorts. We're getting there. We're ticking away here. So go ahead and subscribe. Why not? And Dom, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And thank you all. Have a great